My name is Alex Hoppel, and I am an Eagle Scout and senior at MHS. I participate in both baseball and orchestra. Next year, I am planning on majoring in sport analytics at Syracuse University. Today, I will be leading the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Via YouTube or via their link on Facebook. Another change that we have made is this makes it a little difficult to have a citizens speaks portion of the agenda. So I would encourage you, your board members are still all very accessible. You can find everyone's email address on the district website. And I would encourage you, if you have questions or concerns, to reach out to all of us or one of us, any of us. We'll make sure that that we can help point you in the right direction. But that is right now the best way to stay in contact with the board. That takes us to our board targets and goals, which is our superintendent update. We have the same 3 goals that sit under this section, and I'm just going to read these out loud. And then, Jerry, I'm going to pass it to you, and I think maybe to Mike as well, and Becky. Our 3 targets are: students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. So I think the first item is to talk about the Muskie Return to Learn plan.
Yeah, and if I may, I have some information on our current online service that we're providing, and I just wanted to give a brief update to the board of where that's at. From the time that this started at the end of March till till today, May 11th, we've had 82,431 hits on the page, and it's since April 12th. There's been over 19,000 hits. It's been fairly consistent through that time, K through 8, around 2,100 to 2,400 students per grade. I should say there's been 21 to 2,400 hits per grade each week. And that, again, is just K-8. And the reason we don't have high school information, the high school started a little bit sooner than the other folks in getting this going. They also, because of the volume of courses they had, they didn't go to a website. They used a Google Doc that kids would go to that doesn't have the same capacity for measuring the analytics. So it's been fairly, like I said, fairly consistent over the weeks. It was higher at the beginning than probably what it is now, but it's been fairly consistent, and it's also been the highest day is Monday, and the lowest day is Friday. So I just thought I'd give you folks some information on where we're at with that. Now the thing that and I'm going to ask Mike to give an update on where we're at in the return to learn. We did have a Zoom meeting last Friday with the Department of Ed folks. As I had mentioned in a communication, the governor did change direction on the school start date, and it's now gone to that if you start before August 23rd, that it has to be in excess of the hours required. I did ask the question, what's the rationale for that? And the answer was the Department of Education had no idea what the rationale for that was. So, so be it. So though the reality is we're probably starting August 23rd. But I'd also say, and Mike is going to give a little more information on this. This is probably going to be the most intense and difficult planning that probably districts have taken on. And what you're trying to do is plan for something that you don't know exactly what it's going to look like in the months ahead. but we do have to have a plan in place to get things rolling. So, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of give you an update on where things are at and the status of the Return to Learn plan.
Thanks, Jerry. Good evening, everyone. Becky and I are going to provide the board an update and overview of our fall Return to Learn plan. The Return to Learn plan is due to the state by July 1st and has three main components to it. It's curriculum and instruction, its operations, and then special populations. We have currently 32 members on our Return to Learn committees and 4 administrators chairing these committees. And myself included, Becky Wichards, Stephanie Zelig, and Stacy Orr. Our committees are made up of a very diverse and talented group of educators. Becky and Stephanie and Stacy have done an excellent job of putting together and leading the committee work. One of the goals of our work is to satisfy state requirements, but ultimately it is to develop a plan which best meets the needs of our students, parents, and staff, and enables them to have a seamless and successful transition back to school in the fall. We are also striving with our committee work for transparency and communicating out to our stakeholders at a high level. To accomplish the transparency and communication goal, we'll be recording all of our large group meetings. We had our first one on May 7th, and also making all of our committee materials available on our new Muskie Return to Learn website. Becky will be providing you an overview of that site in a few minutes. I want to take this opportunity to thank Lisa Bunn for all of her efforts in setting up this informative site. And I also want to recognize Jerry, President Drawbaugh, and our incoming superintendent, Clint Christopher, for serving on the committees and for all their guidance and support. So with that said, really our committee work is kind of guided or driven by the following assumptions. The first one is that our school may have to look and operate significantly different this fall. We have encouraged our committee members to embrace the opportunity to think outside the box and be open to change. The second assumption our work is based on is that our committee work will be ongoing throughout the next school year. Once the committees make their final recommendations on June 1st, additional work will be necessary this summer and next year to prepare, implement, fine-tune, and evaluate our recommendations. The third assumption we're working from is that our committee work is complex and that our work needs to be flexible and evolve as new guidance from the state and public health becomes available. We also recognize that much of our committee work will overlap with other committees' work as well. The fourth assumption is in an attempt to have uniformity among our committees, we are utilizing the district-created Return to Learn form and we're asking committees to keep their recommendations to one page or less. We're also kind of emphasizing to the committees that we do not need to have the details worked out in the recommendations right now. That will probably come this summer. We'll probably be putting in work. The committees will be putting in work to figure out the details. What we're looking for right now is the recommendations. The fifth assumption we're working from is that we are striving to keep subcommittees small and manageable, but also striving to be inclusive by reaching out to stakeholders and allowing them to vet our recommendations prior to becoming finalized. Becky, again, will kind of go over some of the ways we're going to vet these recommendations. And then lastly, because this work is new for everyone, and the fact that we are truly in uncharted territory, mistakes are going to occur. We are emphasizing to committee members not to worry about making mistakes and not become overwhelmed by the unexpected. The committee knows that the district is committed to helping them navigate these uncharted waters and is providing them whatever support they need. I'll now turn it over to Becky, who will review the committee timeline, give you an overview of our action plan form, provide a visual of our work, and share out the resources the committee are utilizing, and provide an overview of our Return to Learn website. So Becky?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So first, we're going to review the timeline. So as Mike said, we had our first meeting on May 7th, and this was our first large group meeting, and we followed after that meeting with our committee groups. So from May 7th to 11th, which is today, we developed our subgroup committees, and we set up weekly meetings with the chairs. So May 11th through the 22nd, the work that will be done will our subcommittees will work on the timeline and action steps on the reentry plan, and they will meet once a week with the committee chairs for updates and feedback. Then we're going to have a large group check-in meeting on May 21st. Then the week of May 25th, we will finish the initial draft and begin the vetting process with outside groups that I'll go into a little bit later. And then we'll make adjustments to that initial plan and prepare to submit a final draft. On May 29th, we'll have another large group check-in meeting. And then from June 1st to June 7th, the draft will be submitted and the committee chairs will review the final draft in preparation for the school board meeting with all of you, which is going to be held on June 8th. Then the work after the board meeting, June, July, August, and to be continued. We will continue to have large group and subgroup meetings. We know that there's going to be ongoing reflection. We know that there's going to be adjustments to the implementation plan. And we know that we're probably going to be spending a lot of time together with this year and possibly even next. So as Mike talked about, this return to learn template. Well, this template was created from the premise that there would be a uniform process and a protocol to ensure consistency amongst all groups, accessibility to everyone, and a formatted process for this group work that's taking place now. We also wanted to ensure alignment with the committees. We have a curriculum and assessment committee, a special populations committee, and an operations committee, and we wanted it to be organized and all in one place. So the template, which I will be showing you shortly, articulates the action steps, and we're calling them kind of the big ideas. So guidance from the committees and subcommittees will work through possible options on each one of these big ideas. So these plans will then be vetted through numerous groups. These vetting groups will include students, parents, teachers, community members, board members, public health, nonprofit groups, union groups, etc. So we know that this is going to be a guiding document. In the end, it will prepare us for the fall and beyond, as well as fulfill the reentry plan for the state requirement. And last, resources. So a Google site has been created where you can find all of the work that Mike talked about, and as well as what I did. The timeline, the template, the videotaped large group committee meeting minutes, and an ongoing list of resources. Our community groups will be adding to the resource tab on a regular basis. As we know, we get a lot of documents on a regular daily basis, and things are being pushed out as things are rapidly changing. And we feel that there's a lot of resources out there that may help us guide in the development of this return to learn plan. So at this time, I am going to share with you this. Now, we have not pushed this out district-wide because we wanted the board, we wanted you to be the first to see this. Our plan is that tomorrow there will be a district-wide communication sent out from Dr. Reedy, and the link will be on this. So we will have lots of people accessing this after tonight. So as you can see, we talked about these three groups. So the curriculum assessment, special populations, and operations. And you can see these big ideas that are under each one of those committee meetings. The next tab shows the committee membership. And you can see here who the co-chairs are, the committee members. You see their name, their current role, and how they serve the district, as well as an email address. The timeline, this was the timeline that I touched upon, so you can look back at all of the dates and kind of see that is the timeline that we're looking at as of today. And then this resources tab. This is something that is ever changing. We kind of grouped it together. The first part is basically general resources for all the groups. We know there's going to be overlap, And through the vetting process, we will make sure that our plan is aligned with one another. So at the top, we kind of clumped it into resources for all, and then we broke it out into our 3 committees. And our committees and our subcommittees can post things, and they are, as you can see, there's quite a few documents there that have came already from our groups that have been really working hard on this since on the 7th. And then here we have our Return to Learn template. So you can see that we've got the committee meeting up here, the chairs, who's on there. And then, for example, they've already started to work. So this is kind of live in time. So we have our problem statement, which is the big ideas. And then our groups will work together. Like here we have it looks like we have a subcommittee with some people already listed. So they are currently taking this problem statement, incoming assessments to be used to gauge current individual student gaps. And they are working through that. They're coming up with action steps. And as Mike alluded to, this we're looking for an end result of maybe 1 page, 1 to 2 at most. And then if you, on your own, obviously when you get your link, you can kind of look through and you can kind of see the work that's already been done, and you can kind of check out those problem statements as they occur. And in this last tab, we have our meeting recordings. So we had our first meeting on May 7th. So you can kind of here's a summary of what we kind of talked about with the large group, and then you can see a link. So if anybody wants to go in and click that on, they can listen to the meeting. And then when we have our other meetings, this is where we will house our minutes for everyone to go back and look. So at this time, it's kind of exciting. So our work is just beginning, and June 8th, we will be bringing back a plan to share with you, a recommendation to share with you as well. So this just kind of gives you an overview of what we're all, actually May 4th was when we started, and to be continued we have the news to share with you on June 8th. So I will open it up to any comments or questions
Becky,
that you may have.
Becky, I might just add one other thing about the board might be interested in is the vetting process. The vetting process is the way that will work is you can see that we have a lot of individuals involved on the front end of it, but we also are going to have groups like Becky said, a parent group, a student group, a certified group, a non-certified group. They will all have a chance to vet these recommendations as well. And then we're going to turn it over to each school's building leadership team to give us further feedback on the recommendations as well. So it's going to go through a lot of hands before it gets to the board, and there'll be a lot of opportunities for input from different groups before it gets to the board. So I just want to mention that, and like you said, we'll open it up for any questions.
Mike and Becky, this is John. Is it possible you can send us the link so that we can go through this document and read through it and have this information before June 8th so that we can have at least some sort of an idea about the plan?
Absolutely.
Yes, actually, John, you are going to get this link as well as our entire district tomorrow. But yes, I can make sure that Lisa sends it out to the board ahead of time so you have the link and you can always go back to that site and see how it develops over time. Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one thing I might mention to the board too is we would encourage you, if you have articles that you think would be beneficial to our committee work, feel free to add that. You'll have the ability to add things to it, the site as well. So we would appreciate that.
I might have missed this, but are we involving any community members in any of those committees?
We are, Aaron. We are right now in the process of identifying the committee members, community members. One obvious one would be public health, local public health. We're looking at United Way. We're looking at a lot of different organizations. We're probably 6 or 7. Wow. Yep.
Okay, Mike, this is Karen.
Yeah.
My question to you has to deal with the board itself. Where do you see where we fit in this structure? Is that something that we can be a part of during this time rather than just waiting until information comes to us like Becky was talking about later on. We may not necessarily have the expertise per se in a certain area. I like to think that we have learned a few things because of the fact that we are on the board. And where do you see us fitting in to be able to help this process along the way, rather than just sitting on the sideline, so to speak?
Sure. Okay. That's a good question. Is that, I guess I would start at the end and say that obviously the board will have final say over the recommendations, and then working backwards, how I guess I think the committee envisions it is that starting tomorrow, you're going to have access to everything we're working on. And we encourage you and feel free to give feedback on the process and what we're working on. And as it progresses, we'll be making recommendations available to people to look at, particularly the board. So before we actually get to the board meeting to go over the recommendations, you'll have opportunities probably for input. You'll have opportunities to look at our recommendations prior to that. And then obviously at the board meeting, you'll have an opportunity to give us feedback on those recommendations. So I don't know if that answers your question exactly, Karen. If it doesn't, just let me know.
It answers it reasonably at this point in time. If it feels like it's more as in what we can do to read it from what you have listed down, not be a part of the actual process as you're doing it. But as you said, this is an ongoing thing that we're trying to learn what makes sense and who needs to be involved in it and everything. So just want to make sure you realize that as a board, or at least I'd say for myself, I would be encouraged to be able to be on any help that I can.
The other thing I would remind folks is that what we are going to require to turn into the state is going to be so minimal that it'll be a matter of maybe 6 or 7 check marks that you're going to do. The plan we're putting together is much more complex and will be a living document. So between June 8th, when the board looks at this, I would imagine each month the board is going to be revisiting that plan and saying, well, we have new information now, so we're going to need to adapt this. But so what we're really looking at is by June 1st that you put together the structure that hopefully as these things come up and that need to be modified, that within the structure, you're going to find the solution. So I think the board and the other vetting groups are going to have an ongoing work with this. For instance, the department was really adamant that we really need to probably plan that everybody won't start school on day one. That you're probably looking at some sort of split schedules. You're looking at some sort of different model where some days some kids are in school and others are at home doing online or other type of learning, and they alternate days. They may alternate times. All of that is something right now we don't know if that is going to be the case or not. But you kind of have to have a structure in place. Well, what if that does happen? Someone described this as trying to nail Jell-O to the wall, and that's probably as good a description as anything right now, because we know we have to reinvent schooling in the next 6 weeks. What for sure the situation is going to be like, and for sure what the resources we're going to have are a little bit iffy yet. So there's going to be a lot of time for adaptation and changes and modifications and input. It certainly will not be a finished product come June 8th or July 1 when we send off the middle assurances to the state that we have a plan. Mike, would you say that's a fairly accurate description?
It very much so. What we've been kind of talking about as a committee is that's probably July 1st will be when the work really starts, because we'll have more information. We'll have to start working out on details. So we'll really lean on the board a great deal to give us, feedback on how we evolve and how fluid we need to be with our recommendations. One of the things we're looking at as well is we're looking at, and if you're interested, you can see some of these articles on our research section, it talks about what some countries that had the coronavirus hit earlier, what they're doing now to bring kids back, some of their precautions, how they're set up. And I think we'll be able to learn a lot from some of those countries. And like Jerry said, is a lot of the things they're doing are different than what we currently do in schools, ranging from testing all students as far as temperatures, having staff members wear a mask, not having lunch in large group settings, just so many different things that. But I think we can learn a lot from other countries that are currently going through this as well.
Mike or Becky, go ahead.
Jerry, you mentioned possibly having certain days in school, certain days from home or whatever that might be. What about lead times on like technology needs or even health supplies or any of those? Some of those, if we're talking about an August 23rd start date, would need to be even started now, right? So is the community, are they looking at like their longest lead time needs for some of those things and thinking about it that way?
Well, and we've had some conversation. I think we could probably get a unit in everybody's hands if we wanted to on August 23rd. I think we would have enough units that we could do something like that. We probably, I think one of the things that we're probably short are some power cords and some of those things that I think that those could be taken care of. I think the bigger issue is, let's say we have to do that for safety, but it's going to be really hard for the economy to open up if school isn't open up as usual, because you still now have kids that need to have care. So there's going to be, I think, this pressure on that might be the best best way to start school. I think we're going to get a lot of pressure politically to open up and do the best we can, and that's going to be part of this give and take on this thing. I think we can have the resources in place though on the 23rd to get started, and then I think there's some questions that the board is going to have to wrestle with. Do you require everybody to wear a mask? Because I'm going to tell you that will not be as easy as saying everybody should wear a mask. There's going to be some things that are going to have to be addressed that are going to be more political than educational.
Yeah, I was just thinking about lead time, even if it's furniture or plexiglass or health supplies or whatever that might be, some of those things probably could take months to sort of get figured out. So I was just wondering if we had a schedule for things that might have a longer lead time.
I think that.
Go ahead, Jerry.
No, and I think too, the other thing that nobody has figured out is how do you keep the social distance with preschool and kindergartners and first graders? Who have no concept of that. How do you possibly make that a safe environment? So I think there's a lot of those things that will have to be addressed. The good news, by the first part of June, we'll have an idea of some of those things, and then you still have a couple of months before school has to get started. So, but no, I don't disagree with that. It's not what those recommendations, I guess, turn out to be, Aaron.
So Jerry, this is John again. So your plans and this whole team plans is like planning for, like, I assume now the 23rd of August as the first day of school next year. Is that like everything around that date?
I think that's the reality of it. They said you could use your excess hours over 1,080 and do some things, but that gets you so few days that it probably doesn't matter. I think it was a terrible decision on the governor's part, because by starting, if we could have started August 1st, I think it's one of those things you're going to need maybe to have a calendar of 220 days and hope you get 178. But it is what it is, and that's what we've been told, and we're going to have to work with it. But I think it was a terrible. And I guess if they would have provided some rationale, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. But not giving any rationale and just setting an arbitrary date of the 23rd doesn't make very much sense.
Thank you.
Becky or Mike, it's easy for me to say this because I'm not having to do the work and just the Herculean effort that you and your committees are doing. I got two questions. I feel like there's got to be some sort of excitement, because Jerry said something about reinventing education in the next 6 weeks. this is probably the biggest reinvention of education in the last 100 years, it feels like.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's an
1,000.
opportunity to really do some creative things, you know, for our students. That's the first thing. Secondly, not to add more work, but do we have contingency plans and what that's going to look like if this does, and not you, but if this whole thing rears its ugly head again, and instead of being in classrooms, we're not.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
you're working on both those plans, the and or
Right.
type of
Yeah.
thing.
Toby and Becky, jump in if I don't answer this completely, is to answer both those questions. The first one is that we are absolutely, Toby, seeing this as a very exciting opportunity. And I think one thing that we hope is that maybe some of the things we change and implement will improve our education, improve our efficiency, improve in a lot of different ways, that we'll actually continue some of those recommendations, even when we're through this. And I think a lot of people are excited by that because it can be very, very engaging work if you have the right focus. I think the second part of your question is that, you know what, Toby? Second part, I'm forgetting what your second question is.
Yes, we exclusively talk with groups about having a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and so on. So, because we know that something change tomorrow, and like we kind of gave an example of the grab and go lunches. You know, lunch what we're saying could be now, it could be different. So we will have multiple, you call them contingency plans. But yes, we have asked the groups to come up with a lot of different plans because we may need to go through several of them in order to stay within what the governor is asking us to do at that point in time. So yes, we will have some options.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Becky and Mike, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you guys and the committee have done on this. I know it's an ongoing task and that you've put a lot of work. I can see that you've done that already. Probably one of my biggest, I don't know, the concern would be too strong of a word, but when we're planning things, I think that it really gives us the opportunity to look what's essential. And when I think about essential for me to live, it's do I have water? Do I have food? Can I breathe? So from an educational standpoint, what are really those basic things that we need? And maybe it's not so much for focus on content, because all the time we talk about learning being on a continuum. And I think that that's going to be something that our teachers and our administrators are going to have to really remember, that we're on a continuum. The kids will eventually get it. We'll get caught up at some point. You know, it doesn't have to be, I don't think we have to put that timeline, or I don't want to be one of those that's saying, what's the timeline that we got to get from point A to point B? Because it is going to be so fluid as we go that we're just going to, I think we need to remember, we want to assure people that we know it's on a timeline. What are the essentials? And for the kids that have those essentials already, what kind of extensions do we build in? So more of a comment than anything else, but keep up the good work. And if you guys need any support, you know, you've got mine.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I think from a board perspective, I too would say thank you for all the work we've done so far. I know when the 3 committees were established, really looking at operations as the first place where it makes sense for a board member to be involved, because my sense is there may be a little bit of policy may need to be considered on some of the things we do. We don't know that for sure, but I think that's a possibility. And certainly the big question of the school calendar and making sure that that always is approved through the board, as well as the rest of the plan will be too. But to me, that feels like one of the most overwhelming pieces, along with, Becky, you mentioned planning, having a plan A through ZIII or something, and it does feel like that. And I too would echo that it's hard to know where to start, and it's hard to feel like we make progress. So I think Mike's comment about it's okay to make mistakes. We don't know what this is going to look like. And then knowing that if we get a solid plan for 48 hours, I'll feel really good about that. And if that 48 hours turns into 72, I might just be amazed. I mean, things are changing that quickly. So I think we're just going to need to continue to keep reading the site watching the information that's out there, and then figuring out how we as a board can support the work that's being done. And we'll let those of you that know curriculum do curriculum and tell us what that needs to look like. Any other questions for Becky or Mike? I'll echo the comment, by the way, about the calendar being frustrating. If only we all had a vote on that. So, all right. So anything else on the return to learn?
I don't think so. Again, I just really want to thank everybody that's putting out so much time and effort on this. And I would say, after listening to the state report, our process and protocol is certainly far beyond what the state is putting out there for guidance. So, and that's hats off to these committees. So the next thing on the target and goal report is a Susan Clark update, and I'm hoping that Chris and Corey are on.
We're here.
There they
We're
are.
here.
Good deal. Because if not, I was going to have to bring out a song and dance or something. But I wanted the board to get an update of where you're at with scheduling and also some of the construction that's going on there. And so I'm going to turn it over to you two to carry the ball on this one.
Sounds good. Thanks. We'll start off with the schedule. We're about 98% done, I would say. So everything looks really good, I think, from a class size standpoint, a room standpoint. So basically what we have is class sizes in all the core classes. They range from anywhere from 17 to 24 students. And so we're really excited that we can keep those class sizes at a really manageable rate for our teachers. The exploratory classes are similar. The counselors are still kind of balancing those out right now, so they'll finish that. But there's not going to be any classes over 25 students from what I can see. So again, we're really excited for our teachers to have those manageable class sizes. And I think that there's a testament to the school board and making sure that we have an adequate staff to keep those class sizes at a reasonable rate, because there's a lot of districts that don't have that. So we do appreciate that. As far as the building itself goes, in our last update, same thing. Almost every one of our teachers has their own room. The only ones that would not have their own room are teachers that are out of the classroom co-teaching with other classes at certain points of their day. So there's no two classes in any one room at any time. It would just be, let's say 2 special ed teachers are sharing a room. One of them has a resource class with 5 or 6 kids, and the other one's out co-teaching. So the facility space that we have is going to be adequate for the students that are coming in. So that's good news. Some of the building updates, things are progressing really nicely. One of the benefits of not being at school is these things can get done a lot sooner than normally planned. So if you go back there, so the gym floor is now being resurfaced. So it's all sanded, and that's going to be painted. That's the left picture there. That's going to be painted exactly like the high school floor. So we've been kind of doing that gym in stages. So you can kind of see there's still some blue scoreboards up there. Those are going to be painted purple to match the rest of the purple and gold. The floor is going to be done, and then the bleachers are now on order too. So the bleachers right now are like blue and gold. So those will be all switched to purple and gold here over the summer. So.
Chris, if I could just throw in, we were unfortunate enough to have water damage on the gym floor, which caused an insurance claim, which is paying for the lion's share of this refinishing. Yeah. So I appreciate, Corey, you drilling that hole in the water pipe.
So to the right of that, the second picture there, that is where the stage used to be, and there used to be the left part of that picture that used to be a movable wall. For any of you that can remember that, that wall has become permanent, and we took down all of the old lights and curtains and things, and that's where the choir is going to be, and that is a unbelievably nice space for them. It's about not quite twice the size of the current choir room. And it's just nice and clean and big and open. And, the choir people are very excited that they have that space.
Chris, sorry to interrupt with that.
Yep.
Is that wall that you just put in, is that soundproof anyway, since that's going to be shared with the gymnasium?
Yeah, what they did is they insulated it with, they put thicker, drywall / wood, and then they like double insulated the whole thing. So we're going to see how that goes. I think it's going to be fine though.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So the next picture then on the updates here, probably the most exciting one, the band and orchestra room. So this used to be the wrestling room. So any of you that knew what that looked like, the transformation to this room is pretty remarkable. So there's a couple things in that room. One, it's a great big open space so they can hold their large classes. Two, they have a room off to which is the picture on the left, which is probably about 900 square feet that they can use for small group practice. And then there's two other office spaces that are quite large so that the teachers, both the band and orchestra teacher, can be in there. The tiles aren't in yet, but there's going to be acoustical soundproof tiles that go in where the lights are there. And once they get in, that room's going to be completed. A lot of the storage things that we had over at Central, we're bringing over to West, so we'll be able to store all the instruments very easily in there, which has always been an issue in probably every building that we have, is just being able to find places for all the instruments. So that room is really nice, and it's going to be a great thing for our students and our staff. The rest of the updates really are going to happen this summer. The parking lot will get done. The office space, the main office space, is going to be remodeled. And then there's a few classrooms that need some walls finished. And for the most part, then that'll be pretty much complete. The cafeteria space and gym, the holes that, or the doors, I guess, that are going to be put in between the cafeteria and the small gym will be done yet this summer. And that'll open up those spaces so we can spread some kids out during lunch, especially now, will be really helpful. So I think that's it for the building updates. Is there any questions about those?
No, I just want to say thank you, Chris and Corey, for your hard work. I mean, we can see that even from the few pictures that you share with us. I'm sure that building will look really nice once it's done.
And I also want to thank Chris and Corey for everything that you've been doing for the last year to make this work. And I would also say that it's probably couldn't be a more crucial time that we have the one building going into this next year. I know somebody had said, well, maybe it'd be great if we used Central Middle School for another year and kept things, smaller. But the reality of it is that what we are going to need is everybody on the same page, from curriculum and instruction matters to sharing of materials and doing the online things and all of those kind of things. So I think the reality is it couldn't have come at a better time to make sure our resources are in one place. The other thing I would also say is that even if you're thinking somehow you're going to make have an advantage with 7th and 8th grade, all the other buildings are going to be going through the same thing of trying how do we separate kids out and that type of thing. So everything from the amount of resources we have from people and money to run a building, to resources to make sure that we can deliver the best instruction and curriculum to kids. Really, the timing of having the junior high come into one probably was really, really beneficial.
I'd just like to say that I'd like to thank Corey and Chris also for working hard on the schedule to keep class sizes at a manageable rate. I really appreciate that, and I know the staff will really appreciate that also.
Yeah, I agree, Danny. The other thing I would say is you guys have done a heck of a lot of work. A lot of times we don't toot our own horn enough. I think the more that we can get the work out that you've already accomplished and the things that are going on and try to create some positivity in our community. You guys are doing great things. It looks great. Maybe that's, we get people feeling positive about the school system and what's going on in it.
Yeah. And I'll say, honestly, I think our staff has really embraced what we're doing. And, I feel like people want to come to the new building. And I feel like teachers are reaching out to see what they can do to be a part of it. And I think that that's a testament to them and to, I think we all know that educationally, this is going to be a positive thing for us for a long time in our community. And the staff has done a great job at working hard to make sure that this transition goes as smoothly as it possibly can.
Yeah, I would echo that, Chris. I would just say, on top of the already unique situation of trying to prepare for online learning modules and make sure that our students are doing that, our staff, we're already set up for a transition, but, to figure out how to get things transitioned over and make sure materials are going with them and the building at Central is being packed up and shipped over. Thanks all across the board to our staff, to our maintenance team, to the custodial crews at both buildings who are working to, prepare rooms, and they're maintaining their social distance and getting things ready so that we're still able to get this process delivered on time and in a safe way.
Yeah. With that too, just an update on the Susan Clark branding. We have a little bit of work to do with that as far as signage goes, front sign. I reached out to Mary Wildermuth, who's in turn reached out to the Susan Clark committee in town. And our initial conversations are we're going to provide some kind of entryway that recognizes the Clark family as you walk into the building. So if you come in our main entrance, there's a white wall there that we've dedicated to that space. And we haven't had a chance to get together with that committee yet, but that space will be primarily dedicated to providing some, informational things. People that just don't know who the Clarks were and who Susan Clark is. We want them to be able to browse over that and get an idea of what they're walking into, and kind of get some pride going for what our building will be named for. So as that evolves, we'll certainly give you guys some updates. The other thing that we'll certainly do is have our curriculum in social studies involve Susan Clark and Alexander Clark and the Clark family. And so we'll certainly work with our social studies department and come up with a process of ensuring that all of our students also receive some education on where they're at and why their building is named after Susan Clark.
Chris, I want to say thank you to that. That is almost an overwhelming take on it, because I know the process we got to this point took a while, but to know that you heard it, and by hearing it, you're trying to expand on it and making sure that everybody is communicated in the right way with it. So thank you for staff for everything doing on that.
Thanks. Then the last thing, just the transitions into the new building. Again, our plans kind of got derailed. We obviously were going to build these into the end of the year where we had all of the students. We've always brought over, the transitional students, but we were going to bring over the current 7th grade students from Central over and whatnot. So we understand this still has to take place in some way. And so as soon as we get a green light to be able to do some more things in the buildings, we'll start planning some transitional things for our students. And those could be, you know, just students coming, walking through the building, getting guided tours, having their schedule in their hand, being able to go to from class to class, you know, things like that. So those things are going to be in the works here. We're just kind of in delay mode as we are for everything else that we're doing. So I think that's all I have.
Thanks, Chris. Corey, and again, I also want to just echo that we couldn't have had better people working on this project this last year and a half, and it'll be exciting to hear where that building is at a year from now. So good work.
Thanks.
I believe that takes us up to the science STEM things, and I'm hoping, Lisa, you have some pictures.
We do, Jerry.
Okay, because otherwise I'm going to have to do hand puppets.
Jerry, I'll just give a quick overview of some facility updates for the board. The first thing probably the board wants to know is, and probably always wants to know about our projects and should know, is that both our science and STEM project as well as our shelter projects are not only on schedule, but they're also on budget. We are closely monitoring both budgets, but it looks really good right now. And when I say they're on schedule, it means probably the following is that the shelter project, we expect to probably be able to occupy the shelter by probably June 15th. And what that does for us with the science project, as the board knows, science STEM project, is it allows us then to be able to occupy the science building and science and STEM building as well before school starts. So we're excited that that's on track. As the board knows, we were probably down for about a month because the construction firm decided because of the coronavirus to stop working for a month. They went back on schedule May 4th. So it looks really good. And then secondly, as far as the science project, we're also on schedule for the science project to be completed. We should probably by the end of June be able to occupy the science area as well. So that's in the process of happening as well. And we do have some pictures for you to kind of give you an overview of what those two projects look like. This is an outside project, and I really can't wait for the board to be able to get a tour of the facility because it's just a beautiful facility with beautiful views. The rooms are spectacular. As these pictures show, there's a picture of a hallway to the left, and then the other one is one of the classrooms. The classrooms range from about 1,600 to 1,800 square feet. They're unbelievably nice with tall ceilings. The hallways, as you can see, are beautiful. They are also very high ceilings in the hallways as well. The next pictures show the one to the right there is outside on the second floor of our science and STEM wing. As the board knows, that students and teachers will be able to do some actual work on the roof as far as different projects, different experiments, those type of things. So that's looking very good. And the view up there is beautiful. And then also there's another example off to your left there in the picture of another science classroom as well. The next pictures show, if you want to go back one, yeah, right. Oh, the next one, I guess. Okay, that is the next one. This picture here shows, this is a very interesting piece of the project. It's what we call a learning stair. And so it's a little bit hard to probably conceptualize based on the picture here, but it is a place where teachers will be able to take students for a classroom or for small group work, and they can work on these stairs. It also will have the ability to have a screen come down, and so a teacher could show something. They could also teach something in this area. It has a kind of a multi-purpose options to it, and it will be a place for students where they can do small group work, they can study, those type of things as well. I think when you see these stairs, you're going to really be impressed by them. The next pictures kind of show, and I think science people are always very excited about storage. And they've never really had a lot of storage before. And so you can see what a storage one workroom looks like. And then the other picture shows you what a science STEM storage facility looks like as well. So they're going to have an enormous amount of space for storage and also work area too. And I think that's the extent of all the science pictures. And then the next project, I'll give you a quick overview, is our storm shelter project. That's just a picture on the outside of what the ultimate would look like. This next picture shows you the inside of the structure. And if you go all the way down, that's where the locker rooms would be. The middle of that building is where the concessions are. And then the area down from there, our bathrooms will be the public bathrooms. So like I said, we should be able to occupy the inside of this building by June 15th. But the outside work, which would include like the arches, the paving stones, that type of work, that will be completed for sure before the first football game. We do have contingency plans in place for both projects. Say if the science project, for some reason, they have to stop working on that, or say the storm shelter project, they have to stop again, work on that. We have talked to the city, and the city has indicated that they will work with us to make sure that we can open up the Science and STEM Center, even if we aren't completely finished with the storm shelter. But we don't think that's going to be a problem. But we thought it would make sense to have a contingency plan on that. So with that, I'll kind of open it up for questions. I guess one thing I would add about the West Susan Clark project is that is also on budget. It'll probably come in a little bit under budget. And like many of you have said, Chris and Corey have done a great job with everything in making sure we stay on budget on that as well. So with that, I'll just open it up for questions from the board.
I think, Mike, I don't have a question. I do have a comment.
Sure.
I mean, just sitting here and listening to all these projects and all the additions, and I think that's by itself will be enough reason for us as a community and as a school district to celebrate all these achievements and let definitely our community know that things like that are happening even while we are experiencing this unusual time. So I would like to see and suggest that perhaps, I don't know what will be the best way to reach out to our community, but I would like perhaps to suggest that it is important to let our community know about what's going on and all these improvements and additions that we are witnessing right now. I don't know how, but perhaps a paper article, perhaps something, some sort of communication with the community leadership or something like that. But we need to let them know that things like that are happening right now.
Yeah. Thanks for the feedback, John. And we can absolutely do that. We also, besides, I think we'll try to get some things out this summer to communicate and update the community on these projects and get the community excited about it. We also plan on having some grand openings. Right now, we're kind of working out, as you know, some of the details. We were hoping to have those before the school starts. It may not be feasible now, but we do plan on having some grand openings so we can have the public come in and see these projects as well.
You know, I can imagine how excited the science teachers are to try to get into that new facility after what they had to endure for the last few years. What are the plans for the existing science wing? Are we retrofitting that into different classrooms, or what are we doing with that?
That's a good question, Denny. we envision that it will be repurposed for sure. We have not allocated funds yet and not determined yet what that repurposing will be. So that will be certainly in our plans, facility plans, but we haven't defined that yet.
Okay.
I guess the short answer to that maybe, Denny, is the short term before it is repurposed or remodeled, they will be using it. They will be using those classrooms.
Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mike? All right. I think that takes us through all of our board targets and goals report. Jerry, do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
No, I think a lot of people have made that comment that this is something the community really can be proud of when you look at our project, and the enhancement to the community is really worth a lot, and it does deserve a worthwhile and a worthy celebration of that whenever we can get people together to be able to do that. And I also just really want to, again, I think, Mike said we don't sometimes toot our horn enough. I think we are doing some things in this district that really is not common in a lot of other districts. We need to do a better job of being able to get that out. The fact that you had a lot of, you had AEA personnel that were looking at what we were doing with the whole return to learn plan and some of those kind of things indicate, we have a lot of good things going on. We don't do a very good job maybe of letting people know all of that that's going on. But this community has a lot to build on with the people that you have working in the building. And I just really want to also thank Mike and Becky for the work they've been doing to keep these things moving along and to get these committees up in place. And Mike has been really involved in the capital projects along with Tom. And these things don't just happen. They just don't fall into place by accident. They happen because you have really good people out there doing things in this district.
And in the middle of a pandemic, I might add. All right. Well, the next item on our agenda is the action and possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, student-teacher contracts, driver's ed, and student contract for tuition out services. What are the wishes of the board?
Tammy, before we get going too far, I would like it noted that I have a family member on the employment recommendation part of the consent agenda, so therefore I plan to abstain from voting on this. So I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I'm not sure, so I just plan to abstain. But I did want it noted that I do have a family member in the employment recommendation part of that.
Okay, Mike, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that.
I'll make the motion
So
to.
oh, go ahead, Jenny.
I said I'll make the motion to approve the action items as listed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion?
I just have one question, Tammy. Jerry, this is probably for you, I suppose. Is this is the big time of year when we have the resignations and everything. Is early retirement and all that, is it panning out the way we expected it to, with the resignations and the new hires and everything?
Yeah, I think I think it is. I would anticipate we're going to have fewer new teachers than we have, just because I think this year there's movement from school to school and community and that kind of thing. We're anticipating right now probably 15 new teachers. I think we had planned to have some savings due to the early retirement and not replacing some positions, and we are still in that safety zone of that. So I think we're going to be fine with our intention will be met with where we're at.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And an abstention. Okay, and the motion carries. That takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is letter H, which is to approve the resolution of intent to continue participation in an instructional support program and set a public hearing for June 8th, 2020 at 7 p.m. to consider continued participation in the ISL program as provided in Iowa Code. Tom, I'm going to guess that you have some more information for us.
Yes, I do. Good evening, everybody. So in your board book, I did put in several documents, and actually I added two more to this, two more documents. So hopefully you got those this afternoon. They were re-uploaded to the board book. So the process of moving forward with a board-approved instructional support levy, and talking to Jerry, obviously our current voter-approved instructional support levy was approved back in September of 2012. It started with the fiscal 13 school year. And obviously the board has two options. You can do another 10-year voter approved, or you can do a 5-year board approved. And this will just extend that expiration of the voter approved. It'll extend that to 2028. And if you really think about, the way I think about this is, 2023 might sound like a long ways away, but really we would have to have this in place by the time we certify the 2024 budget, which is in April of 2023, which is about 2.5 years from now. But this process really allows, and you'll see this in the timeline, that this potentially could go to voters, and that just allows the board enough time to have a special election or have an election in at the next school board election. And should maybe that first one fail, there's still time to have another vote. So that's kind of the reason that we're starting this ahead of time, getting things in place, so the new superintendent really doesn't have to worry about this for several more years. So on that first page, the support levy timeline, as I stated, the current voter approved expires in 2023. This is just going to extend the levy to 2028. And then should a petition occur, it just gives us time to, we wouldn't have to have more than one vote, but if we did, it just gives a time for that to happen. So tonight, we're asking for approval of the resolution of intent. That starts on page 3, that resolution of intent that sets the public hearing for June 8th. And notice the public hearing is on page 2 of the board book. The language does not change from the current voter approved language. So it is partial property tax and a partial income surtax to fund this. And I have some information towards the end of the board book or towards the end of the documents about that. And then also the language doesn't change, and the purpose of the ISL would be for any general fund expenditure. And then that the first page there explains that there is a 28-day waiting period in case that you get petitioned. And then after that 28-day period, the documents would just get sent to the Department of Management and the county auditor. The second page is the notice of consideration that would be published in the paper. And that would have to follow the timelines of, no less than 10 and no more than 20 days before June 8th, and we can still meet that deadline. The third and fourth page then would be the resolution of intent that we're asking for approval tonight. And all this language, basically, I summed it up. We're setting the public hearing for June 8th. We're actually going to then say that we are going to approve what was the language? Resolution to participate in the ISL. We would do that the same night as the public hearing. The funding would still be property tax, income surtax, and for any general fund purpose. So page 5, I'd ask you just to look at lines 1 through 9 and not lines, or 1 through 10 and not lines 11 through 15. At some point between Friday when I put this together and today, I realized it was not correct. But the first 10 lines are correct. And I just want to show the board, since 2014, when this was enacted, that there's not very many ways that a school board can generate spending authority. So if you think about the basic formula of certified enrollment multiplied by the district cost per pupil, that's basically our regular program district cost. An instructional support levy is something that can generate additional authority. And line 2 kind of shows the dollar of property taxes, the rate. So you guys are familiar with the rate. I present that every April. Kind of line 4 showing the percent of overall rate that the ISL property tax rate is of our total rate. And then the income surtax portion, that's the dollar amount. We've had a 1% income surtax since this implementation, and that's the dollar amount for that. So I'm going to go and skip to page 6. And page 6 in the board book, new page that I added. And at the top, it's in green. It talks about our unspent authorized budget worksheet, the ISL that started in FY14. So I'm just asking you to look at the green lines on that document. So that's lines 27 and 34 and the very bottom line. Line 27 shows, starting in fiscal 14, the amount of instructional support levy that was generated. Line 34 shows what our UAB, our unspent authorized budget, was at the end of every fiscal year since fiscal 13, and then projected through 2020. And then the last line is that percentage of UAB. So I'd ask you to compare that document with the next document, which is our unspent authorized budget worksheet, had there been no instructional support levy passed in that started in fiscal 14. And you can see the lines there in red. On line 27, it's zeros across the board. Now, granted, this document is showing our actual expenditures from fiscal 13 through fiscal 19. We made no adjustments because we had the ISL. But you can see that pretty soon into fiscal 15, or excuse me, fiscal, sorry, I have my bifocals on here, fiscal 16 and so on, where we are going into, or actually it's fiscal 18, where we would start having negative spending authority, right? So it kind of shows our unspent, our UAB percentage at 6% in FY13, and then it goes down to 4.2, 4.5, et cetera. So it just kind of shows what happens if we wouldn't have that instructional support authority. There's about $2 million that we'd be talking about in reductions. So the second, or page 8 then, is just showing comparing Muscatine with several other school districts our size, our instructional support levy rate, our ISL rate, and then the percent of ISL program funded. And the way I can explain that is in the code for the instructional support levy, there is a state aid portion in the code, but obviously the state of Iowa does not fund that state aid portion. And so technically we are not going to get the full authority. We're only going to get the property tax and income surtax portion. So what that document is showing is we're only getting 68% of what a instructional support levy can generate, because there's a state aid portion that is that we're not getting credit for, basically. So I'm not sure if you knew that or not, and so I was just going to point that out. And that document shows it's different for every school district in Iowa that has an ISL, but ours is funded at 66% for FY20. And I will point out then that about 326 schools in Iowa have an instructional support levy. And that's what I have on page 9 then. Those are a listing of all the school district discretionary levies that basically the board has control over. And that's the code section is identified. And you have an option of a board approved or voter approved. And then the number of school districts that have the levy is 326 out of about 327 or 28 or 330. I'm not sure where our district's number size is, but so that was a lot of information, I know, a lot of financial information, but the process is, again, by roll call vote, we're asking for a resolution of intent to approve that resolution of intent to continue our participation in the instructional support program. Any questions?
So Tom, if I could, a couple of questions for you. This is not new.
Correct.
So this is, we're not asking for new tax. We're not asking for additional dollars. This is something that's already been in place.
Right. That is correct.
And I know that when the board did the voter approved in 2012, it was with a lot of discussion to do whether we were going to do voter approved or board approved. And at that time, to your point of today, I think there were less than 10 school districts in the state of Iowa that were not using the ISL opportunity. Is the board limited on the number of 5-year terms that they can approve that and eventually have to send it to voter approved to do a voter approved again, or can that?
No, you could do a 5-year voter. You could do a 5-year board approved instructional support levy as many times as you want. Now you can't do 2 5-year renewals right now. In fact, we're kind of maybe a year out of when schools would probably go through this process, but there's nothing that says we can't do this process now. So to answer your question, no, you could continue to do a 5-year board approved levy, for as long as a board approved a 5-year levy.
Okay.
One of the oh, go ahead.
And there's a cost if we do the voter approved, even if we're going in with another election that's happening, there's still a cost to us to do that.
Yeah, there would be the ballot. If it's on the regular school board election, the cost would be minimal, but yeah, if it's a special election, we would pay for the whole special election.
Do you have a rough idea what the cost of that is?
Oh boy, I wasn't prepared for that question, and I don't have that off the top of my head. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It seems to me like it was $5 to $7 grand. Is that does that sound?
Tammy, that's what I was going to say too. It's somewhere in that range. I think it's north of 5,000. And the instructional support levy is so critical to the operation of the district, and so important for the district to have in planning for the future. So next year, and as you start looking at the curriculum audit and some of those changes that you're going to be making, you really need to know what resources you're going to have over some length of time, because those things are going to be important. So, I completely agree that the sooner that you can get this in place and over with, it's one less thing that you have to deal with as you're going to be taking on some other really significant changes in the district.
And I do agree, Tom, when you mentioned like 2023 comes very fast. I'm sure that will be soon. And I just want to mention something. Based on your presentation, you indicated that through the ISL, we are getting around $2 million a year, right?
That's the story we're generating, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion on that topic or questions for Tom? Tom, I'm not even going to ask you what happens if we don't do it.
Well, I showed you what happened, yes. I need to.
It's not a pleasant picture. So I think what we're looking for is looking for what the wishes of the board are, but potentially a motion to approve the resolution of intent to continue the participation in the ISL program. That would mean setting a public hearing for June 8th, which is our next regularly scheduled board meeting, to consider the continued participation in the ISL program. And that would be to move forward with the period of 5 years for the board approved.
Well, Tammy, I would like to move to approve the resolution of intent to continue participation in an instructional support ISL program.
I will second that.
Is there a second? Great. So it has been moved by John, seconded by Karen, to move forward with the motion as laid out in your agenda. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Lisa, you were so good to put a note on the agenda, and thank you for that. We need to do a roll call vote, so I will turn it to you.
Director Cooney?
Yes.
DeBeat?
Aye.
Drawbaugh?
Aye.
Finn?
Aye.
McCarter?
Aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Tom, anything else for us on that topic?
No, I do not. Thank you very much.
You bet. So our next agenda item is to take action on the MBAEA Induction Consortium Agreement for the coming year. Jerry, are you going to guide us through that, or?
I can, and then I would ask Becky to jump in when if I steer off course. This is a continuation of a program that we began this year. It is an AA sponsored program to provide mentoring and induction to new teachers into the district. It is not paid for out of general fund monies. It's paid for out of teacher leadership monies. And I think most people were really pleased with the program this last year, and I think it's a good way to help our new teachers in the district get on board to for our district. So Becky, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Just that we're looking at right now, we probably will have about 15 teachers. We're estimating 15 to 18 teachers that would be supported with an induction mentoring coach. The other teachers that are either a year or two or that come into our district, which is the need, they already have their licensure, but they just need a year of mentoring. Our current instructional coaches pick those teachers up. So we truly use these induction coaches for beginning educators. And so far this year, we have seen great progress, and we're excited to continue another year. And as Jerry said, this is a portion of TLC and not the general fund.
Becky or Jerry, is the $10,000 a year per teacher? So we're looking at $150,000.
Yeah. Great question. So we actually, tonight you are saying yes to this, and then we actually get billed later as to how many teachers we have. It would never be more. This year's cost was around $6,000 per beginning educator. There are 8 of us that right now belong in the consortium. Currently, those besides Muscatine that serve in this in the consortium is Delwood, Andrew, Comanche, Columbus, Easton Valley, Maquoketa, and Central DeWitt. So what happens is all of the 8 districts, we tell them how many we need, then they divide those up by coaches, and then we actually get billed for that proportion. So this, it will never be more than $10,000 per BE. Typically it's between $5,000 to $6,000 per BE. And we're looking at an estimated of about 15 to 18 BEs that would be served.
And Becky, that's year 1 and year 2, so it's twice that cost. Would that be accurate?
We have the luxury of the induction coaches. We determine who they serve. So our district chose we would have the induction coaches serve our year 1 teachers. If we want them to continue on a year 2 with the induction coach, we sure can. But we're looking at, from a cost perspective, what we can afford is about 15 to 18. So that's what we will do.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
The induction coach, is that person is somebody, they're outside of Muscatine, they come from Davenport or?
Yes, so
somebody from inside the Mississippi Bend AEA?
You are exactly right. So if you belong to the consortium, then you can have a coach. So basically there's an opening. The 8 districts that belong to that, if any teachers in any of those 8 districts wanted to interview and go through the hiring process, then we would just get that deducted from us. We don't have a current Muscatine teacher that's put in for an induction coach. So the induction coaches currently this year and next year will be coming to us from out of district in one of these schools. So there's currently 4 induction coaches that serve the 8 schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are the wishes of the board on this item?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Been moved to approve by Toby. It's been seconded by Aaron. What questions or other discussion do you have on this topic? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. I thought motions were hard in person sometimes, y'all, but it's even harder when don't get to see each other because I don't know who to look at when I'm waiting for somebody to make a motion.
Maybe we should have a thumbs up to use.
Good idea, Karen. All right, so that takes us to our discussion and the information portion of our agenda. And one of our first topics for discussion is facility rental. And Jerry, Mike, I didn't ask ahead of time who gets to cover
Yeah.
that.
Well, I guess I will. We have not looked at facility rental rates for some time, and it's probably this is probably a good time to start doing that. And this is again one of those things that is probably more political than and certainly has more to do with making sure we maintain with good community relations with different groups. What I would recommend that we do is Tom has volunteered to get some ideas of where other districts, what other districts are doing with different kinds of groups. And I'd like to suggest that we have a committee come together, a couple of board members, along with Tom and some of the facility folks, our athletic director, and take a look at these and come up with a recommendation of what would be a appropriate rental costs for different groups to use our facilities. You know, I firmly believe our buildings are meant to serve the community. But there's also a cost involved when people use our facilities that needs to be looked at. And I also think there's probably a difference between nonprofit groups and groups that serve all students as opposed to maybe some for-profit groups that only serve select students. And so I think it'd be good for our community to get together and address that and update our usage agreements. Thoughts?
Is there a particular building or buildings that you're talking about for these? Because I'm not sure if I and where it means at.
All of them. There's all of our buildings get if there's a gym in the building, they get used. There's classrooms, the auditoriums. I mean, there's our fields. There's just about anything you can imagine in any building may get used. And depending on the purpose, the group is determined by the cost. And we haven't looked at it. It's probably been about 10 years since the district's looked at looking at those rental rates. And so I think it's time this seems like a good time, especially with the new facilities that we have. We just need to probably take a look at that. So.
I guess the reason I'm asking that, Jerry, is because being that we have the central building, is that hands off then for that being used, or how's that supposed to be working?
No, the auditorium will still be used. The gym will still be used. If someone has a use for, needing something, I think we, like I said, almost anything's on the table. But we just need to have some guidelines on what will the different charges be and the costs.
All right, thank you.
Jerry, is there any talk about, at one time there was a facilities or talk of using a facilities software package?
Yes.
Coordinate with the school system or what we currently use at the school system. I think that would be a lot easier to manage if that was part of it. Yeah,
and it is. And that's what's driving this a little bit now, Mike, is that that's ready to go. But you need to have the amounts in there, and that's what probably brought it a little bit to a forefront of so we can get those established going into June.
Kudos to you guys for trying this. I think the biggest headache will probably trying to be determined what is a feeder program and what is not a feeder program. Like you said, there are people that give lessons for money and they say they're feeder programs and others that don't. So
yeah, and I will like I said, I have philosophically I believe that a nonprofit organization that takes any of our students in should have the least restriction on rent. Those that regardless if they say they're a feeder program or not, but are restrictive, that there's a fee that leaves some kids out, should probably pay more. That's my opinion, and that should not carry the day.
Right, I would tend to agree with you.
So
Jerry,
yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so I think it would be helpful to have a couple of board members on this, because again, this is really comes down to as much community relations as it does finance or education.
Well, Jerry, if you don't mind, I would like to serve on that.
I will take that opportunity too, please.
Okay. Anyone else? Because we could have 3 and not blow the quorum.
I wouldn't feel bad about being part of it, but I also, if someone else wants to jump into it, they're more than welcome to. I have probably more background information than others might have in this area.
Yeah, you've been involved a little bit with with this, and that probably would be helpful, Mike.
All right, sounds like we have our 3 volunteers.
Great.
No increase in pay for that, just so you all know.
Or 100%
All right, well,
from what they're getting.
there you go. Good. Well, I am glad we are going to review that, because you're right. It's been a lot of years since we've looked at it, and I would like to just even think about making sure that it involves some cleaning when we have use of the facility. And I think especially right now and going forward and what that could look like. So just even seeing that those costs are at least covered would be helpful. Anything else then under the rental discussion, Jerry, for facilities?
No, I think that should take care of it. Thank you.
All right. Tom, we bounce back to you with March financials.
Okay. So presented today in the board book are March financials. So we are 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year here. The first page is our deposit balances at the different financial institutions, our bank reconciliation, and our cash balances then by fund. Page 2 is our fund financial summary by fund. And no comments on this page unless anybody has a question. Page 3, this is our monitoring our expense, our published budget from back in April of 2019 compared to our actual. And we will be more than likely, we will go over on our facilities acquisition and AEA flow through line. But that will just cause a comment in our audit for other findings related to statutory reporting. So I do feel like in going forward into fiscal 21, we will, obviously this report started in I think January or so, and then by the time we were getting into spring break and coronavirus and everything, I think we just it's a comment we've had in the past. There's nothing wrong with it. My goal is to always to get us through and have as many, if I can control any comment in our audit, I want to be able to do that. And by doing a budget amendment, that will be the process going forward. But for this year, we won't. We're too, it's in May already, and I'm just pointing that out because you will notice the percent of budget, we're at 98.2%. So we're gonna go over that line before we hit year end. But not a huge deal, but I just wanted to point that out. And going forward, we will more than likely do a budget amendment if we get to this point in future fiscal years. And the last 2 pages are just our general fund revenues and our general fund expenditures. And nothing has changed dramatically from the prior months. We're still comparable to last year at this time. We're still right at 63% for revenues, or 65, excuse me, and 63 for expenditures. So we're, nothing alarming of our general fund budget, and I think we're in good shape for fiscal 20. So, any questions on any of these? Otherwise, I'm good to go.
Any questions for Tom? All right, Tom, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
That takes us to our announcements, meetings, events that are coming up. May 12th and May 26th will be our next Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry. There's been a lot of work done to increase this opportunity from once a month with the help of many generous volunteers and some extremely generous anonymous donations to do this twice a month, and especially during times of the pandemic. So that'll be at the Administration Center, which is 2900 Mulberry. It's at 4:30 p.m. It's been set up to be a grab and go model that will be utilized. So there won't be, we won't have any patrons will not be coming into the building. Mike, do you want to give us any updates on how some of that has changed in our COVID-19 world?
Absolutely. Thanks, Tammy. It is changed from the perspective, like Tammy was saying, is that parents and students no longer come into the building. What we do is to practice social distancing is we have vehicles pull up, and then they can open their trunk, and then we just put the food into the trunk. If somebody's trunk cannot open up, then we just ask them to put their 2 weeks worth of food in their vehicle themselves. Just a quick overview is we've increased the number of times we're doing it, like Tammy said, to twice a month. And I'm kind of excited to tell the board that we also were able to get funding for that to continue during the summer. So we'll be able to do it twice in June as well, and twice in May. And then we're looking at once in July as well. In the past, we haven't necessarily done it in July, but we've gone from our highest number before the coronavirus hit was about 220 families. A month ago, we served over 370 families, and we ran out of food. This past 2 weeks ago, we served about 260 families. So the need is there. We also recognize with social distancing, we need to be good models for that. And so we do provide, and we will try to be very conscious of this, is that we do provide masks and gloves for all of our workers. We try to practice the amount of social distancing that's recommended as well. And if you ever get a chance to see it, we have it set up now with directing traffic and so forth, where it really is very efficient. We were able to get about almost 300 families through in about an hour and 15 minutes. And so it works very efficiently, and we really appreciate the board's support on this.
All right. And if anybody would like to volunteer, you can reach out to Lisa Bunn, our board secretary. Lisa, I hope that's okay. And I know there's been a lot of tracking on keeping smaller groups of individuals showing up at a time, so that we're also trying to stick very closely to that number of 10 individuals together at a time as they're working through that food and those donations. So thank you for all the efforts to do that. Then our next item would be our next board meeting, which is June 8th is when that will be held. It'll be at 7 p.m. And we don't know exactly where we'll be yet. We may be at City Hall, which that would be where we would normally be planned, but we will, COVID-19 is a little bit in the driver's seat. So we'll see what happens, what's recommended from social distancing. We still may be virtually meeting. We will make sure that we keep our public abreast of what's happening. Are there any other announcements for the good of the cause? All right, we had some great discussion tonight, and I would just say thank you to those that presented, as well as to my peers who, as we work through this time, again, we're trying to create plans and figure out what the fall is going to look like for our students with no thought out path, because it's not there. We are making that path as we go. So I appreciate everyone being flexible, from things like meeting times to food banks to what will the fall look like. And as we continue to do this important work together, we'll persevere for our students, because I know they're all counting on us. So,
Hey, Tammy.
Is there? Yes.
Tammy, I just wanted to make sure on the resolution of intent that the board approved tonight, it did say the public hearing would be, at 2900 Mulberry Avenue, not knowing if, we would be at the city hall or not. So I guess if that's going to change before I don't know that I can change it at this point, I guess. So,
Well, if the board does decide to meet on a site, I would recommend that the Muskie Room would provide more space to distance than City Hall. So I think, I would recommend, if that does become a possibility, you just leave it in the Muskie Room.
Okay.
And then that way you don't have to worry about trying to change the resolution that was just passed.
Correct. Okay.
Okay. Tom, good catch. Thank you. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, unless you'd all like to hang out longer.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Is there? It's funny, it doesn't always take you all long when we're ready to adjourn. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and stay healthy, stay well, and we'll see each other either in person or virtually in another month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.